Captain Una stood on the bridge of her dying ship and watched her world burn. Through the wide windows of the Volari command vessel Peaceful Dawn, she could see the orange flames spreading across the surface of Keth Prime. Her home planet was being eaten alive. The Craxian ships moved like hungry insects across the sky. They were not made of metal like Volari ships. Instead, they looked like giant living creatures with smooth, wet skin that changed colors. Some were as small as houses. Others were as big as mountains. All of them had one job: to eat everything they could find. Una's green skin had turned pale with fear. Her large, gentle eyes filled with tears as she watched the forests where she had played as a child disappear into the mouths of the alien swarm. The Volari were a peaceful people. They grew their ships from special trees and powered them with sunlight. They had never made weapons meant to kill. "Captain," said her second officer, Tarn, his voice shaking, "the Craxians have reached the Children's City. The shields are failing." Una closed her eyes. The Children's City was where young Volari learned to tend plants and sing to the growing trees. It was the most beautiful place on Keth Prime. Now, it would become food for monsters. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 12, Captain. "But they are all damaged. We cannot fight much longer." Una looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed where Craxian bioships were feeding. Each red dot meant millions of her people were dying. The Volari defense fleet had tried to fight, but their ships were made for exploring space and carrying seeds to new worlds. They were not made for war. "Ma'am," called Communications Officer Vel from his station, "we are getting reports from the other colonies. Genth 7 has fallen. Mira Station went silent 3 hours ago. 3 worlds lost in one day." The Craxian swarm was moving faster than anyone had expected. They came from beyond the galaxy's edge, traveling in massive groups that blocked out the stars. When they arrived at a world, they would land and begin eating. Plants, animals, soil, water, everything became food for their endless hunger. The worst part was how fast they learned. When the Volari first tried to fight them with energy shields, the Craxians adapted in hours. Their skin became resistant to energy weapons. When the defenders used kinetic missiles, the aliens grew thicker armor. Every trick the peaceful Volari tried, the swarm learned to counter. "Captain," said Vel, "the quantum transmitter is still working. We could send a message to the other sectors, warn them about the swarm." Una shook her head. "The other Volari colonies are too far away. By the time they get our warning, it will be too late. The Craxians will have eaten everything and moved on to find them." She walked to the transmitter station and stared at the ancient star charts displayed on the screen. Her grandmother had been an explorer, one of the first Volari to map the space between galaxies. The old charts showed thousands of star systems where other species might live. "What about the old emergency protocols?" asked Tarn. "The ones from when we first left our homeworld?" Una remembered the stories. Long ago, when the Volari were young, they had made a promise. If any Volari colony was in terrible danger, they would send out a call for help to anyone who might be listening. It had never been used before. The Volari had always been able to solve their problems with wisdom and patience. "Those protocols were made for talking to other Volari colonies," she said. "We don't know what kind of species might hear the message. They could be worse than the Craxians." Another explosion shook the ship. Through the windows, they could see a massive Craxian bioship rising from the planet's surface. Its belly was swollen with the life it had consumed. Millions of trees, countless animals, and too many Volari to count. "Ma'am," said Vel, his voice breaking. "I'm reading life. Signs from the nursery valleys. There are still children down there." Yuna's heart broke. The nursery valleys were where the youngest Valari learned to sing plants into growth. If the Craxians found them, she could not let herself think about it. She walked to the quantum transmitter and began entering commands. Her fingers moved over the controls, setting up a broad-spectrum message that would travel to every star system in the old charts. She did not know who might be listening. She did not know if anyone would care about a dying species they had never met. "This is Captain Yuna of the Valari Republic," she began recording. "We are peaceful people from the Andromeda Spiral. Our worlds are being destroyed by a species we call the Craxians. They are a swarm that eats entire planets. We have tried to fight them, but we are not warriors. We are gardeners and singers and builders of living ships." She paused, looking out at her burning world. "We are sending our star charts and all the data we have about the enemy. If any civilization receives this message, please know that we are not asking you to fight our battles. We only ask that you remember us. Remember that the Valari tried to bring life to dead worlds. Remember that we sang to the stars and taught trees to grow in space." Her voice became stronger. "But if there is anyone out there who can help, who can save our children, we will be forever grateful. The Craxians will not stop with our worlds. They will spread across the galaxy, eating everything in their path. They must be stopped, or all life will end." She transmitted the message along with complete tactical data about the Craxian bioships, their feeding patterns, and their terrifying ability to adapt. Then she sent the location of the surviving Valari colonies and refugee camps. "Message sent, Captain," said Vel. "It will reach the nearest systems in 6 days." Yuna nodded. 6 days. By then, Keth Prime would be nothing but bare rock and her ship would be floating debris. But maybe, somewhere in the vast galaxy, someone would hear their cry for help. "All ships, prepare for final evacuation," she ordered. "We'll try to get as many people off the planet as we can." As the peaceful dawn moved toward the planet's surface, Yuna wondered what kind of species would answer a distress call from strangers. She hoped they would be wise and gentle like the Valari. She had no way of knowing that her message was traveling toward a small blue world where the dominant species had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Communications Officer Hyun was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the signal came through. He had been working the night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station for 2 years, and most nights were quiet. Sometimes they picked up radio, waves from distant pulsars or the echo of old Earth broadcasts that had bounced off dead moons. Nothing exciting ever happened. The quantum transmission made every alarm in the station scream at once. "What the hell?" Hyun jumped, spilling hot coffee on his uniform. The main screen lit up with data streams, star charts, and what looked like tactical information. The translation software kicked in, converting alien symbols into readable text. "This is Captain Yuna of the Valari Republic. We are peaceful people from the Andromeda Spiral." Hyun listened to the entire message twice before he believed it was real. Aliens. Not just aliens, but aliens asking for help. And they were being attacked by something called Craxians that ate entire planets. He hit the emergency contact button. Within minutes, Admiral Kang was on the secure line from Terran Command. "Sir, you need to see this," Hyun said. "We just received a distress call from another galaxy." Admiral Kang arrived at the monitoring station an hour later with a full team of analysts. She was a tall woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from the Mars colonial wars. Her eyes were sharp and cold, the kind of eyes that had seen too much combat. "Play it again," she ordered. The team listened to Captain Yuna's message and studied the attached data. The star charts showed the location of Valari colonies scattered across the Andromeda spiral. The tactical information painted a clear picture of the Craxian threat. "Bioships that adapt to weapons," muttered Colonel Dae-hyun, the tactical specialist. "They eat organic matter to fuel their reproduction. Standard feeding patterns suggest they consume everything on a planet within 72 hours. Dr. So-young, the fleet's top xenobiologist, was studying the Craxian ship designs. These creatures are fascinating. They use biological technology instead of mechanical. Their ships are literally alive." "Can we reach them?" Admiral Kang asked the navigation team. Commander Jinwoo, the fleet's best pilot, was already running calculations. "It's a long jump, Admiral. We'd need every ship equipped with quantum drives. The round trip would take 8 months minimum." Admiral Kang studied the data again. The Valari were herbivores, plant-eaters who built their civilization around growing things. They had no weapons of war, no soldiers trained to kill. They were exactly the kind of species that would get slaughtered by something like the Craxian swarm. But that was not what worried her most. "Look at the expansion pattern," she said, pointing to the tactical display. "These Craxians aren't just random raiders. They're organized. They hit multiple worlds at once, prevent escape, consume everything, then move on. This is systematic extermination." Captain Minho, who commanded Earth's stealth reconnaissance fleet, nodded. "And they're learning from every fight. Adaptive biotechnology means they get stronger with each battle. If they finish eating the Valari colonies, they'll look for new feeding grounds," finished Admiral Kang. "And eventually, they'll find Earth." The room went quiet. Everyone understood the implications. The Craxian swarm was an extinction-level threat. If they were allowed to consume entire galactic sectors, they would eventually become unstoppable. "Admiral," said Dr. So-young, "the Valari message mentioned they're not asking us to fight their battles. They just want to be remembered." "That's because they can't imagine anyone actually helping them," Admiral Kang replied. "Look at their ship designs. These are gardeners and explorers, not warriors. They've never met a species like us." She turned to the communications station. "Hyun, I want a full response team assembled. Military analysts, xenobiologists, tactical specialists, and get me the president on a secure line." The next 24 hours were chaos. President Kim convened an emergency session of the Terran Defense Council. Military leaders argued about response times and resource allocation. Some politicians worried about the cost of sending a fleet to another galaxy to help strangers. Admiral Kang cut through the debate with cold logic. "The Craxians represent a threat to all organic life. If we don't stop them now while they're still adapting to primitive Valari technology, we'll face them later when they've adapted to advanced weapons. By then, they might be impossible to stop." The vote was unanimous. Earth would mobilize its largest fleet to help the Valari. Captain Ji-won commanded the destroyer squadron Soul's Wrath. She had fought in the asteroid wars and led boarding parties against pirate bioships near Jupiter. When she heard about the mission, her first question was practical. What kind of weapons do these Craxians use? "They don't use weapons," Dr. So-young explained. "They are weapons. Living ships that adapt and evolve during combat. They overwhelm enemies through numbers and biological superiority." Captain Ji-won smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "So they've never fought anyone who shoots back effectively." The fleet that assembled was the largest in human history. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 destroyers, 60 stealth frigates, and 200 support vessels. Each ship carried kinetic weapons, fusion missiles, and boarding parties trained for close combat. But the most important cargo was human experience. Earth was a death world, a planet so hostile that most species would consider it uninhabitable. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, pack predators who could track prey across continents. They had survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, and countless wars against their own species. They were very good at killing things. Major Seanho commanded the Tactical Operations Division. He studied the Valari data and noticed something important. The Craxians have only faced defensive warfare. Every species they've fought has tried to protect their worlds. No one has ever attacked the swarm directly. Admiral Kang understood immediately. They've never faced predators. The fleet departed Earth 6 days after receiving the Valari distress call. As the ships engaged their quantum drives and disappeared into the void between galaxies, Admiral Kang sent a return message to Captain Yuna. "This is Admiral Kang of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call. We are coming to help. Hold on." She did not mention that Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. She did not explain that humans were evolved predators who treated war as an art form. She certainly did not warn the Valari that their saviors might be more dangerous than their enemies. Some things were better learned through experience. The Craxian swarm had never encountered a species that viewed the phrase "fight or die" as an interesting tactical challenge. They were about to get a very unpleasant education. The human fleet arrived at Kepler Station 3 days after Keth Prime fell silent. Captain Yuna watched the alien ships materialize from quantum space and felt her heart sink. These were not the wise, peaceful rescuers she had hoped for. The human vessels looked like weapons, sharp angles and dark metal bristling with gun turrets and missile pods. They moved through space with predatory grace, forming attack formations as naturally as Valari ships formed growing patterns. "Captain," whispered her communications officer, Vel, "the translator is having trouble with their language. There are so many words for different types of violence." On the main screen, a human face appeared. It belonged to Commander Jinwoo, who led the diplomatic team. His eyes pointed forward like a hunter's, and his teeth were sharp and white. The Valari crew took an unconscious step backward. "This is Commander Jinwoo of the Terran vessel Harmony's Edge," he said. His voice was calm but carried an undertone of controlled aggression. "Captain Yuna, we are here to help. Request permission to dock and discuss tactical options." Captain Yuna forced herself to speak. "Permission granted, Commander, but I must warn you, the Craxians are very dangerous. They adapt quickly to any weapon." Commander Jinwoo smiled, showing those sharp teeth. "We'll see about that." The first meeting between humans and Valari took place in the station's main conference room. The Valari delegates were tall and thin, with green skin and large, gentle eyes. They moved slowly and spoke in soft voices. Everything about them suggested peace and harmony. The humans were different. They sat with perfect posture, their eyes constantly scanning for threats that did not exist. They spoke in short, efficient sentences and asked detailed questions about Craxian weak points, reproduction cycles, and command structures. Dr. So-Young worked with Valari scientists to study the enemy bioships. She was fascinated by the Craxian technology, but approached it like a predator studying prey. "Their ships are essentially large organisms," she explained to Admiral Kang. "They feed, reproduce, and evolve. But like all biological systems, they have weaknesses." Valari scientist Nethara was disturbed by the human approach. "You speak of them as if they are animals to be hunted. Aren't they?" Dr. So-Young replied. "They behave like a swarm species. No individual intelligence, just collective survival. Instinct. They're very advanced animals, but still animals. Admiral Kang studied the battle records from fallen Valari worlds. The pattern was always the same. Initial Valari success, followed by rapid Craxian adaptation, then total defeat. Your people fight defensively, she observed. You try to protect your worlds while the enemy learns your tactics. Captain Yuna nodded sadly. We are gardeners, Admiral. We protect what we have grown. We do not know how to attack. That's why you lose, said Colonel Daehyun bluntly. Defensive warfare gives the enemy time to adapt. You need to hit them so hard and so fast that adaptation becomes impossible. The Valari looked uncomfortable with such direct talk of violence. Their whole civilization was built on cooperation and growth, not destruction and death. Captain Minho took his stealth frigate Busan Runner to scout the Craxian feeding grounds. What he found was worse than the Valari reports had suggested. The bioships had consumed Keth Prime completely. Where once there had been forests and cities, now there was only bare rock. The Craxians had even eaten the soil and extracted minerals from the planet's crust. But Captain Minho was not just observing, he was hunting. His ship, invisible to Craxian senses, followed the swarm to their next target. He watched them feed and recorded everything, how they communicated, how they reproduced, where they were vulnerable during the feeding process. They're most vulnerable when they're gorged, he reported to Admiral Kang. After consuming a planet, the bioships become slow and sluggish. That's when they undergo reproduction and adaptation cycles. Dr. So-Young analyzed the data with growing excitement. It's just like any biological system. During reproduction, they divert energy from defense to growth. If we could time our attack correctly, we could hit them when they're essentially helpless, finished Admiral Kang. The Valari Admiral Teshara shared more battle records, hoping the humans could find some weakness the peaceful plant-eaters had missed. The data showed the same depressing pattern repeated across 12 star systems, but Colonel Iunji, studying the records from Earth's military perspective, saw something different. Look at this, she said, highlighting sections of the battle data. Every time you damaged a Craxian bioship, you did it the same way. Energy weapons, kinetic missiles, defensive screens. You never tried anything unexpected. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Teshara. Colonel Yunji smiled coldly. You never tried to kill them. She pulled up tactical displays from Earth's colonial wars, showing human fleet actions against pirate bioships and alien raiders. When humans fight, we don't just want to win. We want to destroy the enemy completely. We use boarding parties, bioweapons, psychological warfare, and orbital bombardment. We attack their supplies, their families, their will to fight. The Valari looked horrified. That is monstrous. No, said Admiral Kang quietly. That is survival. Your species evolved on a garden world where cooperation meant success. Our species evolved on a death world where failure meant extinction. We learned to fight like our lives depended on it because they always did. Dr. So-Young had been working with captured Craxian biomatter, studying their cellular structure. Her findings changed everything. They're not truly adapting, she announced at the next briefing. They're following pre-programmed responses, like a computer running different programs based on input. They can only adapt to threats they've encountered before, or threats similar to ones in their genetic memory. Admiral Kang leaned forward. What happens if we use something completely outside their experience? They would have to develop entirely. New biological systems, Dr. So-Young replied. That takes time. days or weeks instead of hours. Captain Ji-won, who had been quiet during most of the planning sessions, finally spoke up. So we need to fight them with weapons and tactics they've never seen before. Exactly. And we need to make sure they don't live long enough to adapt. The humans began developing a battle plan unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While the Valari focused on evacuation and refugee management, the Earth fleet prepared for total war. Lieutenant Nari tested her fighters in the asteroid fields around Kepler Station. Her squadron practiced three-dimensional combat maneuvers that would be impossible for species that evolved in flat, two-dimensional environments. Major Sionho studied the Craxian expansion pattern and developed what he called aggressive containment protocols. Instead of protecting Valari worlds, the humans would evacuate them and turn them into traps. The Valari watched these preparations with growing unease. They had called for help and received an army of predators who spoke casually of genocide and orbital bombardment. Perhaps, suggested Admiral Teshara quietly to Captain Yuna, we should have been more specific about what kind of help we wanted. Captain. Yuna watched human soldiers loading fusion warheads onto boarding shuttles and wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. These Earth people were clearly dangerous. But as she thought about the children who had died on Keth Prime, she decided that sometimes dangerous was exactly what you needed. The Craxian swarm had spent millions of years perfecting their conquest of peaceful species. They had never encountered anything like humanity. They were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world. The first battle began at dawn over the dead world of Mira 7. Admiral Kang watched from the bridge of her flagship as the Craxian swarm approached, confident in their ability to adapt to any threat. They had consumed 3 Valari colonies and learned to counter every weapon the plant people possessed. They had never faced humans before. All ships, commence Operation First Strike, Admiral Kong ordered. Captain Dae-hyun's heavy destroyers opened fire first, launching waves of kinetic missiles and plasma cannons. The Craxian bioships responded exactly as expected, their living hulls rapidly adapting to absorb the energy and deflect the solid projectiles. Enemy adaptation proceeding normally, reported the tactical officer. Their hulls are hardening against our primary weapons. Admiral Kang smiled coldly. Good. Now they think they understand us. While the Craxians focused on adapting to the destroyer's conventional weapons, Captain Ji-won's stealth squadron moved into position. Her ships had been fitted with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Biological warfare pods developed. Specifically for this mission, target the largest bioships, Captain Ji-won ordered. Hit them with everything we've got. The stealth frigates launched their special weapons. Instead of explosives or energy beams, they fired containers filled with Earth viruses and bacteria. Dr. So-young had spent weeks modifying common Earth diseases to attack Craxian cellular structures. The results were immediate and devastating. The Craxian bioships began dying from the inside out. Their living hulls, which had easily adapted to energy weapons, could not handle aggressive Earth pathogens that attacked their basic biological functions. Ships that had survived dozens of battles against Valari fleets began falling apart in minutes. Impossible, whispered the Valari Admiral Teshara, watching from the command center. They adapted to our bioweapons in hours. How are yours working so well? Because, explained Dr. So-young, your bioweapons were designed to be gentle. Ours are designed to kill. Lieutenant Nari led her fighter squadron through the dying Craxian formation. Her small, fast ships moved in patterns that confused the bioships' tracking systems. The Craxians had evolved to fight in the flat plane of space where most species built their ships. They could not handle true three-dimensional combat. Nari's fighters attacked from above and below, spinning through asteroid fields and using gravity wells to change direction in ways that seemed impossible. Her squadron planted fusion charges on breeding pods while the larger bioships were still trying to figure out where the attacks were coming from. "This is Fighter Wing Alpha," Nari reported, her voice steady despite flying through exploding biomatter. "Breeding pods destroyed. The swarm cannot reproduce new adaptations." Major Sionho coordinated the ground assault on Mira 7 itself. Instead of trying to protect the dead world, the humans had turned it into a weapon. The planet's surface was covered with automated defense systems, nuclear mines, and kinetic bombardment platforms. When the surviving Craxian bioships landed, to feed on what little organic matter remained, they found themselves in a carefully prepared trap. "Detonate surface charges," Major Sionho ordered. The entire planet became a weapon. Fusion explosives buried in the crust turned the world into a temporary star. The bioships that had landed to feed were consumed by nuclear fire before they could adapt to the new threat. But Admiral Kang knew the real test was still coming. The Craxian swarm was vast, with millions of bioships spread across dozens of star systems. Winning one battle would not be enough. "Phase 2, she announced to the fleet. "Operation Deep Strike." Commander Jinwoo led the boarding parties onto captured Craxian vessels. His teams moved through the living corridors of the bioships, studying their internal structures while planting fusion charges in critical areas. The Craxians had never faced boarding parties before. Their bioships were designed to fight other ships, not small groups of armed invaders moving through their vital organs. "It's like being inside a giant animal," reported Commander Jinwoo, his voice coming through his helmet radio. "Everything is organic. Walls that pulse like hearts, floors that feel like skin." "Can you find their control centers?" asked Admiral Kang. "Working on it. These ships don't have bridges like ours. The whole organism seems to be controlled by... Wait. I think I found something." Commander Jinwoo's team discovered that each Craxian bioship was controlled by a central brain organ hidden deep inside the creature's body. It was heavily protected but vulnerable to direct attack. "Planting charges on the brainstem now," he reported. "This should disable the entire ship." The tactic worked perfectly. When the fusion charges detonated inside the Craxian command centers, the bioships died instantly. Unlike mechanical ships that could operate with damaged bridges, the organic vessels could not function without their central nervous systems. Dr. So-young made an even more important discovery while studying captured biomatter. "Admiral," she called excitedly from her laboratory, "I think I know why they're so good at adapting. They're not really individual ships at all. They're all connected somehow, sharing information through quantum biological links." "A hive mind?" asked Admiral Kang. "Exactly. When one ship learns to counter a weapon, all the others learn it too. That's why they adapt so quickly. But it's also their greatest weakness." Dr. So-young had developed something she called a cognitive virus, a signal that could travel through the Craxian quantum biological network and disrupt their ability to share information. "If we can infect their communication system," she explained, "we can prevent them from adapting to our weapons. Each ship will have to learn on its own, which takes much longer." The virus was deployed during the battle for the Genth system. Captain Minho's stealth ships infiltrated the Craxian formation and transmitted the cognitive virus directly into their bioships. The effect was immediate. The swarm's perfect coordination dissolved into chaos. Ships that had moved like a single organism suddenly became confused and disorganized. Their adaptation rate slowed from hours to days. "Now we have them," growled Captain Daehyun, watching the enemy formation fall apart on his tactical display. "All ships, commence full assault. Show them what human warfare really looks like." The Earth fleet attacked with everything they had: kinetic weapons, energy cannons, bio-warfare, nuclear missiles, and boarding parties. But most importantly, they fought with a level of aggression the galaxy had never seen. While other species fought to defend their homes, humans fought to destroy their enemies completely. They targeted breeding facilities, supply lines, and command structures. They used psychological warfare to break enemy morale and orbital bombardment to deny territory. Captain Ji-won led her destroyers on deep strikes into Craxian territory, hitting their rear bases while the main swarm was distracted. Major Seon-ho coordinated planet-killing operations that turned entire worlds into uninhabitable traps. The Volari watched these operations with horror and fascination. They had never seen warfare conducted with such systematic brutality. "They fight like the galaxy is trying to kill them," observed Admiral Tashara. "Because it is," replied Captain Yuna, beginning to understand. "Their whole world tried to kill them for millions of years. They learned to fight back against everything, even nature itself." The tide of war was turning. For the first time since they had begun their expansion, the Craxian swarm was losing. Their bioships were dying faster than they could reproduce. Their adaptation systems were failing. Their perfect coordination was broken. But Admiral Kang knew the war was not over yet. The swarm was vast and desperate. Desperate enemies often did unpredictable things. She was right to be worried. Deep in Craxian space, something was stirring. The swarm's overmind, the central intelligence that controlled billions of bioships, was preparing for a final desperate gamble. The real test of human warfare was about to begin. The message came through on all frequencies at once. It was not like the previous Craxian communications, which had been simple attack patterns and feeding signals. This was something new, a voice that spoke directly into their minds. "Admiral." Kang stood on the bridge of her flagship, listening to the alien intelligence that called itself the Overmind. Around her, human and Volari officers tried to make sense of what they were hearing. "We surrender," the voice said, each word filled with confusion and pain. "We do not understand this concept, but our bioships tell us it is what prey species do when they cannot fight anymore." Dr. So-young looked up from her scanning equipment. "Admiral, I'm reading massive bioenergy signatures from the Craxian core worlds. Something big is happening." Captain Yuna was the first to speak. "Surrender?" "The Craxians don't surrender. They fight until every ship is destroyed." "That's what we thought, too," said Commander Jin-woo. "Maybe we hurt them worse than we realized." But Admiral Kang was suspicious. In all her years of warfare, she had learned that desperate enemies were the most dangerous. "Keep all weapons ready," she ordered. "This could be a trick." The Overmind's voice came again, stronger this time. "We request communication, face-to-face meeting. We do not understand your species. You fight in ways that should not be possible." Dr. So-young worked frantically to trace the signal's origin. "It's coming from their central breeding world, deep in Craxian space. That system contains billions of bioships. Perfect place for a trap," observed Major Seon-ho. Admiral Kang thought carefully. The smart military decision would be to ignore the surrender offer and continue attacking until the swarm was completely destroyed. But something about the Overmind's confusion made her curious. "We'll meet," she decided. but on our terms. Small diplomatic team, heavy escort, and weapons. Ready? The meeting took place on a dead world between human and Craxian space. Admiral Kang brought only essential personnel. Dr. So-Young for xenobiology, Commander Jinwoo for security, and Captain Yuna to represent the Valari. The Craxian representative was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of a massive bioship, a small, almost fragile creature approached their landing site. It looked like a cross between an insect and a plant, with multiple arms and eyes that glowed with inner light. "I am a speaker form," it said through a translation device. "I carry the voice of the overmind. We have never needed to create individuals for talking before. We have never needed to surrender before." Dr. So-Young scanned the creature with fascination. "It's essentially a biological radio," she whispered to Admiral Kang. "A living communication device." The speaker form sat down heavily, as if the weight of individual existence was too much to bear. "We do not understand your species," it said. "You fight like the void itself has consciousness. You attack not just bodies, but minds and spirits." "You were eating innocent people," Captain Yuna said firmly. "What did you expect?" "We expected resistance, adaptation, eventual victory," the speaker form replied. "This is how it has always been. We arrive, local species fights, we adapt, we consume, we move on. It is the natural way." Admiral Kang studied the strange creature. "Where do you come from? Why do you consume entire worlds?" The speaker form was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried centuries of pain. "We come from the galactic core, where the stars die and space itself burns. We fled from something worse than us, something that eats not just flesh, but souls." Dr. So-Young and Admiral Kang exchanged glances. What kind of threat could make the Craxians flee? Creatures of pure hunger that cannot be fought or reasoned with. They turned our homeworld into nothing. Not just dead rock like we leave behind, but actual nothing, empty space where matter used to exist. The speaker form's multiple eyes focused on Admiral Kang. "We learned to consume quickly, because we had to. Always moving, always feeding, always running from the void creatures. For millions of years, we have been refugees pretending to be conquerors." Captain Yuna felt a stab of sympathy. "You're running away just like we were." "Yes, but we learned that consuming others made us strong enough to keep running. We forgot that there might be another way." Admiral Kang was beginning to understand. "Your species adapted to become the perfect consuming machine because you were afraid of being consumed." "Until we met you," the speaker form said. "You are the first species that fights like predators instead of prey. You hunt us the way the void creatures hunted us. It is terrifying and fascinating." Commander Jinwoo had been quietly scanning the area for threats. "Admiral, I'm not reading any hidden bioships. This seems to be a genuine diplomatic contact." Dr. So-Young was studying the biological data from her scans. "Admiral, I think I understand what happened. The Craxians evolved into the perfect refugee species, mobile, adaptable, efficient. But they lost the ability to do anything except run and consume." "What are you suggesting?" asked Admiral Kang. "Maybe they don't have to be monsters. Maybe they can be something else." The speaker form tilted its head, listening to voices only it could hear. "The overmind wishes to know. What is the price of surrender?" Do you consume the defeated like the void creatures do? Admiral Kang thought about Earth's long history of warfare. Humanity had been both conqueror and conquered, predator and prey. They understood the cycle of violence better than most. "We don't consume defeated enemies," she said slowly. "We find ways for them to live without threatening us." "How?" Major Sionho stepped forward. He had been developing something he called Deathworld Rehabilitation, a plan for what to do with the Craxian survivors. "Your species needs to feed on organic matter to survive," he said. "Earth has thousands of worlds that are too hostile for most species to inhabit. Death worlds, toxic worlds, radiation-soaked planets that we use for mining and military training." The speaker form's eyes brightened with interest. "You would give us worlds to consume?" "Worlds that are already dead or dying," Dr. So-Young explained. "Planets with dangerous ecosystems that need to be controlled. You could feed there without harming any sentient species." Admiral Kang saw the bigger picture. "In exchange, your biotechnology could help us terraform hostile worlds. Your ship's ability to adapt and evolve could be useful for exploration and defense." "A partnership," the speaker form said wonderingly. "We have never had a partnership before. Always just consumption or fleeing." Captain Yuna was amazed. "You're offering to make them allies?" "Better to have them working with us than against us," Admiral Kang replied. "Besides, if those void creatures they mentioned ever show up, we'll need all the help we can get." The negotiations took 3 days. The Craxian Overmind agreed to halt all attacks on populated worlds and relocate their swarms to designated death worlds in human space. In exchange, Earth would provide protection and help the bioships adapt to their new role as partners instead of predators. The first test came when Captain Minho led a joint human-Craxian expedition to explore a toxic world near the galactic edge. Craxian bioships worked alongside human vessels, using their adaptation abilities to survive in environments that would kill most other species. "It's actually working," reported Lieutenant Nari, watching Craxian bioships help terraform a radiation-soaked planet. "They're turning a dead world into something useful." The Valari were initially terrified of the arrangement. The idea of making allies with the creatures that had destroyed their worlds seemed impossible, but Captain Yuna understood the wisdom of it. "Sometimes," she told Admiral Teshara, "survival requires making peace with your predators." 6 months. Later, the first joint Terran-Valari-Craxian research station was established on a former death world. Valari botanists worked with human terraformers and Craxian bioengineers to create new forms of life that could thrive in hostile environments. Dr. So-Young published her findings on interspecies cooperation, noting that the key to peace was not eliminating differences but finding ways to make those differences useful. The galaxy began to change. Other species learned about the Alliance and approached humanity with their own problems. Pirates, hostile aliens, natural disasters, challenges that had seemed impossible became manageable when approached with human military efficiency and alien scientific knowledge. Admiral Kang established the Galactic Defense Initiative, a joint military force designed to protect all species from extinction-level threats. The Craxian bioships became its most powerful asset, their ability to adapt and evolve making them perfect for defending against unknown dangers. But the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that sometimes salvation came not from the most peaceful species, but from those who had learned to master the art of survival. Captain Yuna's final log entry, recorded a year after sending her desperate distress call, reflected on the irony of their situation. We called for help and expected angels. Instead, we received demons who taught us that sometimes, to preserve life, you must first master death. The humans from the death world showed us that predators and prey can become partners, that violence and peace can coexist, and that the galaxy is big enough for all kinds of life, even the dangerous kinds. She paused, looking out at the stars, where human ships patrolled alongside Valari explorers and reformed Craxian biovessels. Perhaps that is the most important lesson of all.